I didn't drop out of university because I was lazy. I dropped out because one day I sat in a classroom and it just didn't feel right. I just did not like the idea of somebody teaching me how the world works when they hadn't been in it for years. So I made a deal with my dad and with myself, right? I dropped out, moved to China, and started working under my father. That year broke me, but it also built me. Quarantine in China felt like prison, and the work felt like hell. But I came back a different person. This episode isn't about China. It's about what discomfort can teach you. Most people don't ask questions. If you want confidence, competence, purpose, you don't need more theory, you need more reps. Welcome back to Clear Now, the podcast for those who want to live with clarity and not comfort. I'm Dominic Müller, and in today's episode is about the year I dropped out, moved to China, and worked under my father. A decision that flipped my entire life upside down and forced me to live in discomfort and taught me lessons that I carry with me every single day. If you're the kind of person who is tired of theory, if you ever wonder whether action is better than advice, this one's for you. Okay? Because the truth is this. The world doesn't care what you know, it cares what you can do. So I was sitting in class one day. Fluorescent lighting, slides on the board, everyone half asleep, half awake, when it hit me. This isn't learning. This is waiting to graduate, waiting to be qualified, waiting for someone to hand you a permission to live. And I couldn't do it anymore. So I called my dad, right? I told him I wanted out. I didn't hate learning. I hated the illusion of it. I hated pretending that writing essays about made-up case studies was somehow going to make me a man. My dad, he didn't panic. He didn't play a victim card. He didn't hit me with the classic, "You will regret this one day." No. He just said, "Okay, all right. But if you're dropping out, you're coming with me to work in China. 1 year. Full time. Are you ready for that?" Took a minute, thought about it, and I was, yeah, I'm ready. Not out of courage, but out of hunger. I wanted the money, don't get me wrong. I wanted to skip the line. I wanted to become something while everyone else was still submitting papers and partying on Thursdays. Comfort had taught me nothing. I wanted pain to teach me everything. So I packed my bags, said goodbye to my dorms, to my friends and deadlines, and I dropped out and caught a flight to Shanghai. What I didn't realize in the moment was that it was also during COVID. What I didn't expect was hell. They say the path less traveled makes all the difference, But what they forget to mention is it's also filled with darkness, detours, and doubt. But I was committed because deep down I believed this. Every man reaches a fork in a road, right? One way is safe, soft, socially accepted. But the other, that is brutal, quiet, and almost impossible to explain to your friends. But that's the one that changes you for the better. I didn't know where this new road would lead, but I knew I'd rather suffer becoming someone than stuck pretending I already was. So I jumped, and the fall was far. It was tough. But the next stop of that fall was quarantine in China. Boy, that was a time. Let me tell you about quarantine in China, right? So, 2 weeks. That's what they told us. Just 2 weeks. But what they didn't say, what no one ever warns you about, is how fast those 2 weeks can break a man. The Chinese quarantine hotel didn't feel like jail, right? Because jail has structure. Jail has predictability, rules you can bend. This was something else. It was emptiness with fluorescent lighting. It was a tiny beige room, no balcony, right? No sunlight, just 4 walls and a flickering ceiling lamp that made every second feel longer than it was. And the food, oh my days. I'm trying to explain to you guys what the food was like. Forget the food. It was punishment in a box. I'd open up the government issued meal. Oh my days. And I swear, it smelled like regret, like if seaweed, gasoline, and fermented tofu had a baby, but in a microwave. It still gives me nightmares to this day, just thinking about it, to be honest. There were days where I just stared at it. Yeah. Shut the lid and tossed it in some corner in the room. I couldn't eat it. I couldn't even look at it. It was disgusting. In 2 weeks, I lost 5 kilograms. It wasn't from cardio. It was from pure starvation. People say that hunger makes you focused. No. Real hunger makes you hallucinate. It turns time into a joke and your stomach into a war drum. And hunger is disgusting. Hunger is something that I don't wish upon anybody. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill the room, but it fills you. No conversations, no physical touch, no schedule. And every single day at exactly 6 a.m., they'd knock. Hazmat suits, masks, gloves, no words, just a COVID test that rum up your nose and test if you had brought COVID into their country. And then again at 3 p.m. Twice a day for 2 weeks. It felt like being treated not like a patient but like a problem. Do you know what I mean? Like, They didn't care who I was. I could have been a CEO or a janitor. That would have treated me the same way. For them, I was just another possible infection. The only window I had in my room looked straight to a train station. That was one of my favorite activities in those 2 weeks. Every day I would look out of my window and I watched train after train, people boarding, leaving, living. And me, still there, still locked in. I used to count the trains, just to pass time. But after a while, each one started to feel like a metaphor for everything I couldn't have. I couldn't have freedom, movement, purpose. And after 2 weeks, I thought I was free. But no. The company that we worked for in China added 2 more weeks out of safety precaution. But in a different hotel, a slightly better bed, slightly bigger room, but still the same cage. The only book I had brought with me to China, I think I read it like 2 times. But then my life was basically just waking up, doing push-ups, and talking to myself. I had a lot of conversations with myself in those 2 weeks. At one point, I remember I would literally measure the entire room that I was in with my feet, step after step. I would just walk. That was one of my favorite activities as well. And at one point, I'd lie on my bed and stare at the ceiling. And I'd ask myself, was this what I traded my degree for? And the answer in that moment felt yes. There are levels to loneliness. And in that hotel, I reached the final boss. It wasn't solitude. It was invisibility. You know what I mean? No one asked how I was. No one could. In that country, in that hotel specifically, nobody spoke English. So even when I did raise my concerns, nobody even understood what I was talking about. You know what it teaches you? How loud your thoughts are when no one else is talking. But if you can survive that kind of silence, you don't need noise to feel alive. And I survived. But I came out different, hungrier, meaner, clearer. Because that's what hell does. That's what hell does with a person. Clarity isn't found in comfort. It's carved in isolation. When everything is stripped away and you finally meet the real version of yourself. But the next chapter was freedom. Well, at least that's what I thought. But China had more lessons to teach me. So after that 1 month was done, right? And the hotel room door finally opened for the last time. It didn't feel real. It felt crazy. No one was clapping, no triumphant music was playing, but in my head, right, it was like being released from solitary confinement. And the first thing I did, and I know what you're gonna say, but I sprinted to McDonald's. McDonald's? Why? I didn't eat for a month. And all I could think about in that time was how good would a Big Mac taste right now? I'm honest. I'm being completely honest here. Not because I'm obsessed with fast food, but because for the first time in a month, I had a choice. Freedom doesn't taste like steak and champagne. It tastes like a shitty burger you choose with your own hands. I sat there, biting into the most average Big Mac of my life. And it felt like I was dining at a 5-star hotel. And then after that, we went to the Airbnb. And in my head, I thought, let's save money, probably some shitty box, somewhere we have a bed. But my dad, he thinks differently. He booked us a penthouse suite smack in the middle of Shanghai. Marble floors, massive windows, and a skyline that made you feel like you were in a movie. And I looked at him and I asked, why? And he said this: if we're going to work like hell, we better come home and live like kings. That line hit me. It wasn't about luxury, it was about balance. You see, most people try to escape hard work by avoiding it. No. What he taught me is you don't escape the hard work. You earn the right to recover from it. You don't have to love the job, but you damn well better love your recharge. You know what I mean? Or you'll burn from the inside out. Wow. That suite wasn't a flex, right? It was a survival tactic. A reminder that we weren't just building machines, we were building a life. And in that moment, for the first time since stepping into China, I breathed differently. Deeper. I looked over the city. Lights were buzzing like a circuit board, and I thought, this isn't the end of discomfort. It's just the beginning. But at least now, I'm ready. Because sometimes you don't need a break from the grind. You just need a window to remind you that the grind means something. So what was work like? It was probably like how you'd imagine, right? Wake up, 6 a.m., shower, black coffee, silence. By 7:30 a.m., we were already on site, boots laced, gloves on, minds locked in. From then until 6 p.m., pure output, right? Laying cables, fixing machines, installing systems with names I couldn't even pronounce, but understood with my hands. There's no room for theory when the thing you build might explode. That job didn't ask what grades you got in school. It asked can you deliver under pressure? The work was very physical, right? But the environment, that's what really shaped me. There's no fluff, no pretending. You either pulled your weight or you slowed everyone else down. And my dad had one rule, right? And that set the tone for everything. The only thing worse than bad work is bad people doing it. That meant no assholes on the team. You could mess up, you can screw up, you can make mistakes, but you cannot bring bad energy to the team that you're working with. The guys he kept around, they were all older than me, all sharper than me, and funnier than I expected. They didn't look at me like a kid. They didn't pat me on the head or make me fetch coffee. They treated me like an equal, like a teammate, right? We would swear at machines together, laugh over greasy lunches, and complain about the heat, the wires, the back pain. But we would never complain about each other. And every Saturday, boy, did I love the Saturdays. Every Saturday, my dad made sure we ate like kings. No matter how brutal the week was, Saturdays were sacred. He would take us to these fancy restaurants because throughout the week, dinner was just normal, right? Whatever we would cook at home. But on Saturday, we would eat out at a great restaurant. Spanish, Mexican, Turkish, whatever you can name. It was great. I loved Saturdays because I got to try so many amazing foods. Oh man. When work beats you down, right? You have to have love that brings you back. And the food, well, it makes you human again. But not every moment was light. As you could probably imagine when you click this episode, there were parts of the job where the job was dangerous. It wasn't just a concept, it was physics, right? Especially working in that ceiling. We'd be crawling along rafters, holding 2-meter pipes of steel, right? Trying to lock them into place over fragile ceiling floors. If even one tile was not put in place correctly, it would crack under your weight, and that meant you would fall 2 meters. And the pipe, well, it will fall with you. On your head, on your neck, on your spine. Every second in that ceiling was a negotiation with gravity. There were no harnesses, just instincts and fear. But the good kind of fear, right? The kind of fear that keeps you sharp. In China, I learned to fear gravity more than failure, because failure hurts your ego, but gravity breaks your body. But we did it every day because that's what the job demanded. And somewhere between the cables and the ceiling tiles, I realized discipline isn't built by doing what you love. It's built by doing something that's necessary, even when you hate it. Shanghai was the school no one talks about. And the tuition, it was sweat, soreness, and sacrifice. But the reward? A new version of myself who can show up, shut up, and handle it. 4 months in Shanghai burned through me like boot camp. And then we moved to Chongqing. Wow. The city of Chongqing. If Shanghai was prestige, polish, and pace, Chongqing was raw instinct, right? A fever dream built into a mountain. You don't just visit Chongqing, you surrender to it. The city is a vertical madness. Bridges in the sky, subways inside buildings, roads that curl like dragons around mountains. You enter a building on the 5th floor and exit underground. Like the skyscrapers were stacked like Tetris blocks, stitched together by fog and chaos. That's why they call Chongqing the 5D city. Chongqing isn't a city you navigate, it's a puzzle you survive. Every day felt like walking through a glitch in reality. The air had weight, the lights had rhythm, and the city itself, it didn't care about your plans. You had to adapt fast. In Chongqing, the city doesn't adapt to you. You adapt to it. And you finally get it that if you don't adapt to it, you will get swallowed whole. The pace, the people, the pressure, all of it turned up to 11. Barely anyone in that city spoke English. So there wasn't a foreign bubble, no comfort zone, at least for me. Just work, heat, and fire in the air. And you know what's crazy about that? I loved it. I loved the chaos. I loved the unpredictability. The sense that every day was a new terrain to figure out. Most cities show you their beauty up front. Chongqing makes you earn it. And then one afternoon, my dad took us up Raffles Tower. It's not just a building, it's a statement. 4 towers stitched together by a glass sky bridge that hovers above the city, the skyline, like a spaceship. We walked, stood there, 30 floors above a city that was 30 million people big. And it was quiet. No horns, no shatter, just wind and gravity. The higher you climb, the quieter it gets. Does that make sense? Because up there, only focus survives. That moment did something for me. I looked over a city that looked back like it didn't care who I was. And for once, it felt nice. The world doesn't owe you an applause. It owes you nothing, actually. And when you accept that, When you finally hear yourself think, that's when you realize you have to do something. In that silence, on that sky bridge, I realized something. I wasn't chasing comfort anymore. I wasn't chasing money. I was chasing clarity. And Chongqing gave me that in its own violent, beautiful, unfiltered way. It's not about escaping the noise, it's about rising above it. And until all that it's left is truth. Mistakes don't always show up with flashing lights. Sometimes they show up in the form of your father quietly shaking his head. And that hits harder than any lecture. I messed up. Not in some movie-worthy disaster, one might say. No cables exploded, no machines caught fire, but enough. Enough to make my dad stop, look at me, and just breathe. He wouldn't yell. That would have been so much easier. Yelling gives you something to push against, but silence turns into a mirror. The worst kind of failure is the one you can't justify, because deep down, you know you should have done better. I hated those moments, man. But I needed them. At first, I was reactive, waiting for instructions, checking things twice, but never taking initiative. But eventually, after enough silent head shakes, I started getting ahead, seeing problems before they showed up, organizing tools before they were asked for, laying cables the way I know my dad liked, even before he walked in. And that's when it clicked. You don't become valuable by doing what you're told. You become valuable by making sure no one has to tell you. That shift was internal. No one gave me a promotion, no one clapped, but I knew I was becoming useful. And in a world full of noise, being useful feels like a superpower. You don't become a man when you stop failing. You become a man when failure becomes your fuel. And because once you stop being afraid of messing up, you start aiming higher. Does that make sense? Mistakes aren't your enemy. Hesitation is. And the world doesn't punish you for failing. It really doesn't. It punishes you for freezing. That year taught me that perfection is a myth. But progress, that's built brick by brick, mistake by mistake, until one day you wake up and realize you don't need approval. You earned your place. And the job hasn't gotten any easier. You've just gotten sharper. The worst day of work has to be the ceiling work, and that's easy. I hated going into that ceiling and crawling in that space. We were inside a massive industrial factory, echoing, hot, and mechanical. And our task was to lay pipe through the upper crawl space of this factory. The space above the factory floor was barely 1 meter high. And you couldn't stand, you couldn't even kneel. You crawled. Steel pipes, cables, insulation, and sweat. Boy, buckets of sweat. It felt like building a subway tunnel in a damn coffin. By noon, my knees were numb, my forearms were bruised from dragging my body forward inch by inch, and my shirt was completely soaked. And my patience gone. We were crouched up there for hours, cramping, choking on hot air, working in a maze of metal and silence. Every moment had to be careful, not just because it was tight, but because one wrong shift meant you could slip through a ceiling tile, fall 2 meters with a pipe in your hand. One bad move and gravity sends you a bill that you couldn't pay twice. And in the middle of that, I remember turning to my dad, soaked in sweat, breathing like we just run a marathon, and saying, "This sucks." He looked at me, calm as ever, and said, "You don't have to love it. You just have to finish it." And that hit me. Not as advice, but as a principle. Discomfort is the down payment for growth. You still with me? If you want the rewards, you sign the contract, right? And you don't flinch when the pain comes due. Most people think success is about motivation. But motivation doesn't show up in the ceiling of a Chinese factory. Let me tell you that much. Discipline does. Discipline is crawling through hell with a wrench in your hand and a deadline in your head. And I realized if I could get through this, sweating, crawling, aching, I could get through anything in life, really. The ceiling didn't just test my body, it tested my why. And I passed. But not because I didn't complain, because I did complain a lot. I didn't stop. I finished the work. I finished it. And that moment made one thing painfully clear. You don't need perfect conditions to do meaningful work. You need the decision that nothing will break you. My dad just came into my head, taught me more in that 1 year than school did in 12 years. Not through lectures, not through punishments, but through presence. Every day on that side, he led without noise, no ego, no theatrics, just results. And one day, I asked him how he keeps doing this, city after city, decade after decade, and he said this. And this stuck with me. If the work is shit, make the people good. That's how you survive anything. That one line flipped something in me, right? Because I realized it's not about the job, it's about who you do the job with. It made me reflect on all the things that I've been doing in life, all the hard things. I loved it because I loved the people that I was doing it with. He surrounded himself with people who could laugh in pain, smile in sweat, keep the morale high, even when the temperature was even higher. And I understood why. Because when you're crawling through the factory ceiling or dragging a pipe in a rain, you don't need motivation. You need good men around you. You don't rise to the level of your dreams. You sink to the level of your environment. So make the environment bulletproof. And watching him, seeing how he carried himself, that's when the pride kicked in. As a kid, I didn't understand the sacrifices, the missed dinner, the stress, the quiet in his eyes after a 14-hour shift. But standing beside him, drenched in the same sweat, handling the same cables, I finally saw it. Respect doesn't come from remembering what your parents did, but it comes from finally understanding why they did it. He wasn't just building systems, he was buying time, earning safety, creating margin. So me and my siblings could grow up with options. Fathers don't explain themselves. They show you. They, through what they had to endure in silence. And in that silence, I saw a man I wanted to become. Not just for his work ethic, but for his principles. For the way he made people feel seen. And even on the worst days, that year wasn't just about China, it was about legacy. It was about finally seeing the man who raised me, not as a superhero, but as a soldier, one who never quit. And now I carry that with me. Every project, every challenge, every ounce of discomfort. The best men don't talk about strength. They live it. Quietly. Daily. And without applause. Mentally, though, that year was war. Man, no one my age, no girls, no bars, no lectures, no weekends, just industrial work. Early mornings and the kind of silence that echoes louder the longer you sit in it. There was no normal, no soft place to land. It was just me, my thoughts, and a whole lot of FOMO. I'd scroll on my phone, look at stories, friends out at bars, Europe trips, college parties, laughter, music, moments. And me holding a 2-meter pipe in a furnace of a room with sweat in my eyes and steel in my hands. And yeah, it hurt, but not in a jealous way, right? I was happy for my friends, but in a distant way. Does that make sense? Like, I was watching the life I was supposed to live from the outside. And loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of being understood. And I had that every day. Like, I didn't have people that understood. So what kept me going? What kept me from quitting? It wasn't ego. It wasn't revenge. It was the why. Why? I was doing it for my family, for my future, to build something real, something solid. And yeah, I made good money, but the thing that actually saved me was connection. After work, it was the little things. Talking with my dad, joking about the day's chaos, eating dinner like warriors who survived battle. That time with him and also my co-workers, it reminded me that I wasn't alone in this. That even in the toughest moments, I had someone who understood the weight. And there was our driver. Man, I love that man. Sweetest man I've ever met. Didn't speak a single word of English, but somehow I felt seen by him more than most people who can talk to me. He drove us through the madness of Chinese traffic like it was an art form. Took us out to eat, insisted on paying, smiled every single day. He didn't need words to show love. He showed it through actions. Respect isn't a language. And the real ones speak it fluently, even without words. He didn't owe us kindness, but he gave it anyway. And we gave it back because real respect isn't demanded, it's mirrored. That man reminded me that you don't need to understand someone's language to feel their soul. In a foreign country, surrounded by strangers, buried in labor, those small human connections, small human moments became my fuel. They didn't make my pain go away per se, but they gave it context. Because I wasn't just surviving, I was building. And I wasn't just sacrificing, I was becoming. That year in China didn't give me a diploma, it didn't give me grades, lectures, academic praise, it gave me friction. Friction became who I was. Friction between who I was and who I knew who I could become. Friction between comfort and responsibility, between theory and reality. Classrooms teaches you facts, but the real world teaches you friction. And friction is where character gets carved. You don't build confidence by reading about courage. You build it by crawling through ceilings and holding still, making mistakes, and showing up again the next day. That year taught me that if you want wisdom, don't look for softer pillows, look for harder problems. If you're looking for clarity, don't ask more questions, but step into more chaos. Meaning isn't something you find in books, it's something you earn in the field when your legs are shaking, your mind is fried, and your why is the only thing holding you together. Real education doesn't happen in chairs, it happens in heat, in pressure, in noise, in silence. And it happens on the ceilings you can barely sit in, surrounded by people who bleed beside you. And once you've felt that, the rest of the world makes more sense. You see through the lies, you stop outsourcing your self-worth, you stop waiting to be told who you are, because you know. If you want confidence, competence, purpose, you don't need more theory, you need more reps. Clarity doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. And I promise you, the man who works in the dark will always be clearer than the man who reads in the light. So this week, I challenge you to do something uncomfortable. Not reckless, not stupid, not performative, something real. Say yes to the hard job. Sign up for the thing that makes your chest tighten. Call the person you've been avoiding. Send the application. Start the thing you've been overthinking. Because clarity doesn't come from over planning. It comes from pressure, from friction, from action. Comfort is where confusion breeds. Discomfort is where identity gets forged. So put yourself in motion. Not tomorrow, this week. And when the fear shows up, let it. That's how you know it matters. If this episode hit you, help me grow this thing. Click the like button, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss next week's drop, because we're just getting started. And remember, the world won't get quieter, but your mind can get clearer. So, I hope to see you next week. Stay curious, stay sharp, and most of all, I hope things are clearer now.